Now that the Jeep is parked outside, I don't have to worry so much about it fitting into the garage. Maybe it's time for some 40-inch tires. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name's Casey and this is my Jeep, and today we're going to take a look at just what mods I would need to do to my Jeep in order to be able to run 40-inch tires reliably and still have a good handling and driving Jeep. So I've been doing a lot of research on exactly what it would take to run 40-inch tires on my Jeep, and as you guys know from some of the wheeling that you've seen in my off-road vlogs, I do like to hit the trails fairly hard and go through some of those more difficult obstacles. So I wouldn't just throw 40-inch tires on my Jeep the way it is. I would want to build it properly so that it's going to be reliable, it's going to get me off the trail, and I'm not always going to be worried about breaking my axle or whether or not I have enough lift to run the tires that I would be putting on it. So today I'm going to talk to you about some of the mods that I think are really important if you want to make that big step up to a 40-inch tire. Going from 35s to 37s, I already made a video on what I think are really the essential mods to run a 37-inch tire on your Jeep JK. These are the things I think you should take a look at if you want to consider running 40-inch tires and doing some serious off-roading. The first thing is lift. Now I have a 3.5-inch rock crawler lift on mine with mid arms, which are basically just adjustable short arms. And you know, there's a lot of varying opinions of how much lift you need to run 40-inch tires. So you're going to need to be able to have enough lift to be able to clear your tires without basically having to trim and chop out everything in your wheel wells and get the amount of clearance. Now, the bare minimum that I've seen people run with is going to be a 3.5-inch lift. However, this will require quite a bit of chopping around your wheel wells, specifically on the back as well. You can go with a 4.5, but it seems to be the general consensus is around a 5.5 or 6-inch lift if you don't want to have to do a whole bunch of cutting. Now, I do like running a lower lift because it gives me a lower center of gravity. It means my Jeep, its weight is lower to the ground. I'm not so high up in the air and top heavy essentially. And you know, it just gives me a lot more assurance when my Jeep is doing this on really awkward cambered trails and obstacles. So I would want to keep the lift as low as possible. Now, something to consider, kind of when you go past a 3.5-inch lift, you're going to want to be looking at going to a long arm setup. Now I have on here the rock crawler adjustable control arms, which are great for this 3.5-inch lift. But as you lift your Jeep up higher, the angle of your control arms is going to become steeper and is going to have to go through more angle as it travels up and down. So that's typically why when you go past a 3.5-inch lift, you go with a long arm setup, which means you need less radius on the arms to move more distance in the travel of your suspension. So that's the first thing that I would be looking at addressing is how much more lift do I need? How much more chopping do I want to do? And come to some sort of conclusion of what would be the right lift for my Jeep to run 40-inch tires, get the clearance I need. As well, you're going to have to adjust your bump stops because your wheels are going to come up higher into the fender wells. And when you're flexing and articulating, and so you want your bump stops adjusted accordingly to however much you may have trimmed out of your wheel well. The next thing I would be taking a look at is axles. I have a Pro Rock 44 front axle, but it still has the same size ring and pinion as a factory Rubicon. If you don't have a Rubicon, you're going to have a Dana 30 in your front. You're definitely going to want to be upgrading that axle. And all of the Jeeps have the same Dana 44 in the rear, which is a semi-float rear axle. That means that the axle shafts carry the weight of your tire and wheel. Going to a 40-inch tire, going to be more weight. One of the most common things that you see is when your wheel is bumping into a shelf and you're trying to get up an obstacle and you ram into it, you end up bending the axle flange on these semi-float rear ends. Then your wheel will start to do this when you're going down the road, because your axle flange is not perpendicular to the axle shaft, and therefore you're going to get wheel wobble. So upgrading the axles, lots of options. Dana makes ultimate 60 and 80 crate axles that you can go with. Dynatrac also makes a 60 and 8. Well, they make a 60 for the front, you make an 80 for the rear. So that's going to give you a bigger ring and pinion, which is your gears that are in your axle housing here. It's going to give you a bigger ring gear. It's going to give you a bigger pinion. It's going to give you more strength for running and turning these big, beefy 40-inch tires that you're going to be looking at. The other big thing is in the rear axle. You're going to be switching from, now, I mean, you can't really see anything with this, but essentially what you're doing with the rear axle is you're going to be switching to a full float rear end. That's how the front is set up, and that means that a set of wheel hubs or wheel bearings are going to carry the weight and the load of your tires instead of that axle shaft and flange. The axle shaft then basically is just there to deliver the torque from your differential to your tires, but it doesn't actually carry any of the weight. So you're not going to be bending those axle flanges. You don't actually have any axle flanges anymore. Your wheel is riding on the hub assembly, and your axle shaft is just there to deliver the power to the wheel. Speaking of wheels, that is something else that you're going to upgrade. Well, you're obviously going to be getting 40-inch tires, but you're also going to want to upgrade your wheels, or you're going to have to upgrade your wheels if you go with those bigger axles. Whether you ordered crate axles from Dana or Dynatrac, or whether you went and got a set of 3/4 or 1 ton axles and built those up, welded all the brackets on, one way or another, you're going to have to get new wheels to go on here because of this. So you're going to need a larger center bore in order to accommodate the hub. And with the larger axles, this hub gets bigger, which means you need a larger center bore, which means it's going to push the lug nuts out further. Now, Jeep has a 5-on-5, which means 5 lugs on a 5-inch spacing. The smallest that I've seen with a 1-ton axle or a Dana 60 is the 5-on-5.5, so that expands out to 5.5 inch, which obviously means that you can't use these wheels anymore. The most common is going to be an 8-lug pattern, and that's a very easy way to see if somebody is running a 1-ton or a larger axle setup. Is you'll notice they'll have 8 lugs on their wheels. And don't forget, if you're upgrading your tires, you're going to want to consider your tire carrier. So I've got the Poison Spider body mount tire carrier. There are a couple gate mount tire carriers that you can get that are rated up to 40s, but if you're doing any serious off-road, you're going to be bouncing your Jeep around, I just would, feel more comfortable with a body mount carrier. This one's made by Poison Spider, as I said. You can get them made by other companies, Evo, Genrite, and they basically are going to bolt both sides to the body. They're going to not put any weight on the tailgate's latch system on this side. Even though you beef up the brackets on this side, that latch still has to hold that weight in there. And so to me, this is just a stronger setup and able to carry that weight a lot better. If you're upgrading to a crate axle, it's going to have a 1350 U-bolt or U-joint style flange on it. So I've already switched mine out. This is a 1310 flange, so I'd still have to either have my drive shaft rebuilt or get a new drive shaft in order to connect up to the new axle. As well, in the rear, I would need a new drive shaft because the factory connection on a factory axle is that I think it's a 1410 flange mount. And if you're buying big axles, you're going to get them with the 1350 U-joint on them. The other thing that I find really helpful, even with my 37s, and I absolutely would get, absolutely would not run my Jeep with 40s without this, is hydraulic assist. So on mine here, you can see I have a redneck ram. This is a hydraulic ram that ties into the steering box and is fed fluid through the steering pump. So whenever I turn the steering box, it feeds more fluid to this ram, which drives the tie rod back and forth. This takes a whole lot of pressure off of your steering box, off of the pitman arm and the sector shaft, which the sector shaft is quite weak in these JKs and is very prone to failure running large tires going through challenging obstacles. It'll also just make it a lot easier to hold your line and prevent your steering wheel from being ripped out of your hand when you're driving through obstacles. I really like it with the 37s, and with 40s I think it would be an absolute must to have. Just a couple other notable mods that you're going to want to consider: flat fenders. So you can either cut your factory fenders, or like I have the aftermarket fenders from Evo. Lots of companies make flat fenders. This just gives you a whole lot more clearance, and you're not going to have so much trouble with your wheels bumping into your fenders. So you can chop your factory ones if you're okay with that. It's a pretty inexpensive way to solve this problem. Aftermarket aluminum steel fenders, another great way to also solve this problem, and just gives you that much more clearance with your wheels and tires going up when you're going through obstacles and navigating and basically articulating your axles. The other thing, which you can kind of see in my front window, is some sort of tuner. So I have a Trail Dash 2 tuner. There's lots of less expensive tuners out there, but what you're going to need this for is to adjust your wheel size or your tire size and your axle gear ratio. And then this will allow you to reprogram your computer to accept the larger tires, the different axle gear ratio, which I didn't mention earlier, but when you buy bigger axles, you're going to obviously go with a higher ratio, probably a 513 or 538. And you're going to want to be able to adjust that so your speedo is relatively correct, as well as your computer's not throwing codes out like ABS codes because it's seeing the wheel speed sensors going at a different speed than what it thinks they should be. So you can program that with your tuner. Alright guys, that pretty much wraps up this video. I just want to make a quick video because I was really kind of contemplating, do I keep the Jeep? Do I keep modding it? Do I do a V8 swap into it? Maybe a diesel swap? There's a really nice Cummins crate motor available for it. Do I go with 40s and beef it up? Or maybe do I sell the JK and look at something new? Those Gladiators are really looking attractive, and I'd really be curious to see how they perform on some of the trails that I like to run, and as well be a bit more comfortable for road trips. So 40s, V8 swaps, Gladiator? I don't know. We'll have to see what's going on. But anyways, I've been doing some research on what it would take to run 40s so that I could kind of get an idea of what the cost would be. I wanted to let you guys know what I've come across and what I think I would need to run them on my Jeep, and probably fits the same for most of you guys if you're looking to upgrade to 40s and you want to do it properly. Make sure you have all the right mods to make sure your Jeep is reliable, going to get you off the trail, and isn't just a complete burden to drive to the trail. If you like this video, hit that like button. I do appreciate it. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, smash that subscribe button. I'd love to have you as a subscriber here. I do release videos every Saturday, every week, so don't miss any of them. I'll see you guys soon in the next video.